Calaroga Shark Media.
Happy Halloween. I'm Johnny Mac with your daily comedy news. Sam Morill caught up with the Columbus Underground. Seemed a little salty. They wrote, if you have an opportunity to snag Sam Morill for chat about his career, maybe don't ask him if he's always been pretty funny. Sam said, it's like, hey, how little do you give a hoot about this? I understand it's a common technique to ask about your origin, but it just seems so lazy to me. Sam also doesn't seem to understand why he's tagged as a rising star and said, yeah, I don't know who's writing that, but that's nice, I guess. There are very few overnight successes, so people could say, yeah, he's a rising star for 20 years or something. I mean, I guess it's better than if somebody's like, all right, this is it, so I'll take it. As a comedian, you just hope each year is better than the last, right? That means you're working, but I'm in a good place now. If this was it, I'd be okay with it. Turning to comedy, Sam likes to gauge the energy in a room before he's introduced. Sam said, I'll watch the opener and I'll say, okay, this area's a little drunk, this person might be a problem, but you feel it out. I mean, people surprise you, and they're going to behave differently for me than the opener sometimes. You don't want to generalize with the crowd too much. You want to go in with a positive attitude. When you're up there, I'm going to go in no matter what, trying to give the best show that I can. Sam is now running into an increasing number of show attendees who interrupt his show to do some of his own bits. Sam says, usually it's the longer ones, the ones that are stories resonate with people more. I have one about the White Knight or the one about the alligator or the student magician. Those stories are the ones that people seem to scream out like they want you to do them as an encore or something. And I'm kind of like, no, I don't remember any of those stories. If I remember them, I probably wouldn't be writing new stuff. So those are kind of gone. They live online. I mean, look, that's more of a music thing. You see Billy Joel because you want to hear Piano Man or We Didn't Start the Fire or whatever. You don't go see Billy Joel because you want to hear We Didn't Start the Fire. What kind of Billy Joel fan are you? We Didn't Start the Fire is terrible. Sam said, comedians are supposed to have a new act, and it makes me really jealous of musicians who wrote a killer album and are just like, yeah, I'm going to play this forever. Although it's got to be kind of boring too, right? Iliza Shlesinger talked to the Las Vegas Sun. She is planning a travel show filmed in New Zealand. Iliza said, I'm always working on stuff, and I generally don't like to talk about it till the ink is dried on the contract, but I've been wanting to do a travel show for a while. It's a weird hole in the market. So many men get to do it, to explore and travel and say whatever they want, and there aren't as many women doing it. I'm already traveling. My husband is a brilliant chef and writer, and we were asked to do it. I think we made something special. Interesting. Nikki Glaser spoke to KC.com. And she talked about channel surfing and seeing herself. She says, it happens a lot. I just recently turned on the TV and saw me in an ad for the $100,000 pyramid. I was also in the New York Times Sunday crossword puzzle back in May, which was a huge deal because I play that every day. So stumbling across my own name was probably the biggest achievement of my life. And I say that with no sense of irony. That's going down in history. Whereas most of the stuff I do, people won't remember. What was the clue? Comedian/TV host Nikki. She said, it was very obviously me, and I got so many messages. That's how you find out who your smartest friends are. But yeah, I'm on TV a lot. I just read a quote from Joan Rivers, who said, I never turn down anything. You say yes to everything because you never know. WPR, it was interviewing Gary Gulman about his new book, and they were fascinated by Gary's enemy from Jewish summer camp, a boy referred to as Kampler. Gary said, yes, he was my enemy because he was no more athletic than me or really charming or interesting than me. He was just a regular kid, but he had enormous confidence. And he made the softball team, and he started in the camp play, and he won the sandcastle building contest. I couldn't understand why this kid, who really did not have much more going on for him than I did, was so confident, and I was so shy and sad and felt anxious all the time. And so I felt, even though he had no idea I was resenting him, I had built up so much resentment because I was losing all these things to this kid who I couldn't figure out why he felt so good about himself when I felt so lousy about myself. Gary continued, I didn't go on the zip line because I was afraid, and Kampler, of course, was the first to go on. He was so energetic, was not afraid. He believed in himself. He went on there and zipped down and came down and returned a hero, and everybody was impressed by him. They surrounded him, and they said, what was it like? Did you have a good time? And I'll never forget what he said. He said, well, you learned so much about yourself. He was 9 or 10. I remember thinking, whoa, he copied that. He heard that on a commercial for Outward Bound or from an astronaut or something. I said to him, Kampler, why do you have to be so preachy? You sound like a commercial. And he wasn't fazed by being called out by that. He didn't care. People looked at me like I was an ogre and a jerk. Jay Leno was asked how he would have approached the Trump years if he was still on late night. Jay said, say what you like about the Kennedys. At least they slept with real movie stars like Angie Dickinson and Marilyn Monroe. It wasn't Stormy Daniels and strippers. Leno does watch some of the current monologues and says they're all really good at that, but he often tunes out because of the commercials. All right, Jay Leno, how do you know when it's time to quit? And he says, I guess when you have your stroke. I mean, I like it. Why would I stop? The Boston Globe asked Brian Regan, if you could travel anywhere right now, where would you go? Brian Regan's answer, Germany. I want to drink beer out of one of those cool-looking beer steins while listening to one of those cool-sounding German bands while listening to people talk in their cool-sounding language. As for his travel preferences, Brian Regan says, I like any place that has a pool with a swim-up bar. There's something relaxing about being able to swim over to your bar stool to grab a cool drink. Being home is a vacation. I love traveling, but there's nothing like not being in an airport. I prefer to relax on vacation, but I do like history too, so I enjoy seeing things like Mayan ruins and the Colosseum. People sure like to kill each other a lot in the past. Best travel tip, he said, sit in the middle seat on a long flight. It's a great way to get to know people. Pitchfork did that series with John Mulaney about what music he would listen to at what age. Well, John Mulaney turned 40 and was listening to Remember Where You Are. Mulaney says that was the show we played as the show opener on the Baby J tour. My friend Kevin, who introduced me to Steely Dan, told me about Jessie Ware. Baby J to me is not a dark show. I was really happy when I was talking about those things on stage. I'm not saying I'm proud of everything, but the person standing on stage has a new life that's really happy. That was the vibe of the music. Celebratory, but interesting. Vulture's 25 Comedians You Should Know. Brian Bahi, fantastic. I saw Brian up in Montreal. Brian said, starting out, I felt like there was pressure for every joke to be full throttle, nonstop punchlines the moment you get on stage. I started comedy in New York and go to some open mics where you got like 90 seconds because there'd be 70 people trying to get up there. I saw the people who did well at those open mics were doing these set-up punchline jokes, so I tried to replicate that. Once I was able to move past those situations and I was doing 8 to 10 minute sets or a half hour, I was less concerned about getting nonstop laughs and more concerned about what I wanted to say and how I wanted to say it. I've been enjoying jokes that are a slow build. My favorite comedians were never the ones who had the most laughs per minute. They're the ones who made me see the world through their lens for a bit. So that's how I try to approach joke writing now. Awesome approach, in my opinion. Worst show ever, Brian said, I want to go on record that I like doing bad shows. I think it's funny to do stand-up in a really bad environment, whether it's because the stage isn't really a stage, it's a toilet, or there's no audience, or there is an audience, but they're toxic. That's objectively funny. Like if you zoom out to this third-person perspective and you see that situation for what it is, which is a person trying to pursue this creative endeavor and they're failing at it for some weird reason out of their control, that's funny. There was one time, post 9/11, post-COVID vaccine, pre-monkeypox, where I did this show in Connecticut. It was a show with an all-queer lineup. I took a train to Connecticut with 2 other people. Then we got picked up and driven to some bar in a quaint-looking beach town. The sun was still out. It was a packed room. The crowd felt retirement community. I started a joke where I referenced Michael Barbaro, the host of the Daily podcast, and the room was silent for the entire joke. I followed up with some questions. Do you know who Michael Barbaro is? No. Do you listen to the Daily? They'd heard of it. Do they own guns? Some of them. And I was like, great. I have 18 more minutes of jokes to go. And I proceeded to bomb. Best comedy advice, worst comedy advice. Best. From one of my creative writing teachers in college, she said, whatever field you're pursuing, you need to consume that art. It sounds obvious. I've applied that logic to comedy. When I'm at a show, I try to watch as many of the comedians as I can. Same for movies, TV, any kind of media. Worst comedy advice? Every once in a while, someone will tell me I should do more jokes about being Native American. It's always a white person who says that. I usually mention that I'm indigenous pretty early in my sets. I have a quick joke where I say my traditional Native American name is Chipotle Bathroom Code. But the T is that all my jokes are from an indigenous perspective. My jokes about dating, my parents, getting public lights from a Greyhound bus, all those jokes are about being Native American. Mattel has released the Ted Lasso Barbie collection. You can get a Barbie version of Coach Lasso with a signature blue tracksuit and aviator glasses, or you can play as Rebecca Welton, the owner, or influencer Keely Jones. $50 each. Yikes. Wanda Sykes will start her Please and Thank You comedy tour in 2024, 29 dates beginning March 1st in New Hampshire, going through June 15th in Kansas City. Chortle watched John Cleese's new show Dinosaur Hour that airs on GB News. They gave it 2.5 stars out of 5. Chortle wrote, GB News lured Cleese with the promise of no editorial interference. And Dinosaur Hour, the show he could make with all that creative freedom, well, it's just okay. Episode 1 was a platform for one of John Cleese's perennial bugbears, his long-running campaign against the British press. Chortle writes, Dinosaur Hour certainly does not claim to be comedic, which is a good job, given Cleese's opening line is to promise the show won't focus on trivia like, quote, the latest trans person's bicycle accident. John Cleese, now 84 years old, hosting Dinosaur Hour. That is your comedy news for today. Follow the show for free on Pocket Cast, Overcast, Spotify, and if you hate back episodes, Apple Podcasts. And I'm saying that because they made a tweak, and if you log in now, they're probably only serving you the most recent episode. And I want to point out, on Sunday there were 2 episodes, and on Monday there were 2 episodes. So hopefully you've listened to them all. See you back here tomorrow.